Well, joining me this morning is Mr. Anand Ramamoorthy, the Managing Director of Micron India, to help us understand the entire boom that we are seeing in artificial intelligence, the kind of push that the semiconductor industry has already received from the government of India. What more should one and could one expect from Budget 2026? Mr. Ramamoorthy, thank you so much for joining us this morning on the show, sir. I want to understand from you, first up, of course, are the obvious ones. I think the industry is pretty sure that it wants continuity in schemes such as the India Semiconductor Mission as well as the design-linked incentives. Should there be greater budgetary allocation towards these schemes?
Wonderful to have you have me join the show, Kartik. As you rightly said, the industry is broadly very happy with a lot of the signals that we have been receiving ever since we had the ISM 1.0 come into effect, right? The allocation of budget is one piece, but the execution in terms of picking the right technology partners, making sure the last mile barrier execution issues are being sorted and taken care of. I think overall, it's been a fairly steady, solid story. And the expectation from industry always is continue to give the right signals to all of us so that we continue to stay committed, involved, engaged. So, and as one of your prior speakers mentioned, the budget is one of the many different signals that all of us leverage and receive.
Sure.
And outside of the budget, we've had very good consultative discussions across all the important parameters in the areas of manufacturing, R&D, innovation, deep tech. So overall, very positive with the indicators and signals so far, and hoping that they continue unblemished and maybe a little amplified in the upcoming budgets and other policy decisions.
All right, let's go into some specifics, sir, if I may, because, you know, one of the challenges, that the semiconductor industry sort of in India is associated with is the lack of integrated circuit design in India. Now, while Micron ATMP is moving towards commercial production stage, do you think Budget 2026 needs to really look at incentivizing IC design as a specific policy tool?
Right. I think I've always believed that eventually the capitalistic economy has to bear the burden for scaling. The play the government typically has is to ensure that the early barriers are taken care of. India, thankfully, has had a good 3 decades of solid engineering R&D work happening in different parts of the semiconductor design flow. I would not say all of it is in the highest order of innovation engineering, but some of them are high utility functions being done out of India operations.
Right.
What I would look for is a little more of a focus on R&D, which is a little less tangible compared to many other aspects of manufacturing. R&D is also not deterministic. It is not timeline based, and it's not very fungible either. And for that, I think access to the right problem statements in R&D is so critical. This is where industry partners like Micron can help, because if you can spend a lot of time solving the wrong problem, which neither has scale, nor need, nor necessity, but it's more of a buzz or a headline.
Right.
So the access to problem statements, a little more of focused investments outside of DLI, which is focused on startups. I believe many of the semiconductor multinational operations, other players in R&D and design would benefit from a little more of a focus from the government on what I call patient capital and focused policy around R&D support.
All right, and this R&D, whether there's an increase in the budgetary allocation or not, but overall from India's standpoint, this R&D should focus on which end of semiconductors, in your opinion, Mr. Ramamoorthy? Should India go for semiconductors used for artificial intelligence that go into data centers, which of course are high cost and extremely high value? Or should India still be focused more on the domestic demand for chips, including, let's say, the auto sector, the electronics sector, the telecom sector, which are lower cost, potentially easier to produce and generate a much greater domestic demand?
You know, you won't like what I say, but I'll tell you, it's a little bit of both. It's not an either-or equation, it's an and equation.
All right.
And which is why, because we're kind of coming a little from behind, and we're coming a little from behind, you cannot be just focused on domestic chips for domestic consumption. That market is still not big enough. You need to build a lot of solutions for global markets. That's where scale is available readily. And the world is geopolitically in a very interesting phase in time. So my recommendation would be clearly look at some of what I call mainstream standard off-the-shelf type products for internal consumption, because it gives our country a little bit of that freedom to innovate and scale and expand. but the larger focus needs to be on what the world globally is trending to. There is a ton of AI in silicon design. There is a ton of AI in smart manufacturing. There's a ton of AI on the tool side of the equation. These are areas where many parts of the world are kind of starting at the same phase. We are not way behind. So there is still an ability to catch up very quickly. So I would recommend we do both and do it with caution, prioritize, and do a lot of consultation around which problems to solve and with which partners.
All right. When you say that, sir, one cannot sort of, help but picture the image of Taiwan and those large plants of TSMC. So when you say India must do a little bit of both, while India does have 20%, reportedly 20% of the world's semiconductor engineers who focus on chip design, the question really is around precision manufacturing. So as part of the policy statement, while I understand the ambition could be to do both, but as part of policy initiative, do you think there needs to be then some additional concessions, some additional incentives for machinery imports into India, for example, which can build those high-skill, low-nanometer chips which go into artificial intelligence?
No, I think it's part of what the government is planning to do in the next avatar of ISM.
Okay.
Is to ensure that on the equipment, machinery, there are two parts to it, Kartik. One is obviously equipment for high volume manufacturing, which I think by virtue of policy will get some benefit, but also realize that a lot of the R&D does not need to have the most cutting edge equipment. When we are trying to train workforce or do pilot runs in R&D centers, a lot of the equipment can be refurbished or maybe one or two generations behind. Of course, they come with their own challenges on upkeep and stuff like that, but that's probably a problem that we can solve. So I think, like for example, Micron is a we end up sharing a lot of our refurbished equipment with the top IITs and many colleges in the country.
All right.
To help them with testing skill force and testing and building skill force. So I believe that it's already been planned. It's part of the many recommendations we and others have given to the government of India. Let's give credit where it is due. I think we've had a good policy. We've got the right allocation of money and good intent, and some early results also showing up. But it's a long journey, and as long as we stay focused, give consistent signals, and keep on removing small barriers to last mile execution, I think we'll have a good story the next decade or so.
All right, Mr. Ramamoorthy, if I can just progress a little beyond just the pure play semiconductor manufacturing story and really talk about AI as a whole, do you think, as part of course, the final leg of manufacturing is also the OSAT, the outsourced semiconductor assembly and testing, which seems to be a comparatively lower hanging fruit when it comes to, as compared to at least the large scale wafer fabrication, which requires a lot more investment. So is that something that India, in your opinion, should potentially focus on? And I think more importantly, something that Minister Ashmi Vaishnav also said in Davos, that India is working across all the 5 layers of AI. So the second part of that question really being that AI models, is that something again that the government must try and incentivize as part of Budget 2026?
No, I think I'm a big fan. I'll kind of address your last question first.
Okay.
Kartik, clearly edge AI and more of AI at the edge is going to be very interesting for India, right? And as the minister rightly pointed out, we could participate quite materially in almost all the different parts of the 5-layer AI cake that he and Jensen and others are talking about. But the one I'm most excited about is when you're thinking of small models at the edge, you're thinking of compute and memory are more constrained, and you have to be much more creative. And this is where Indian engineering, creativity, frugality,
Right.
and ability to kind of optimize comes into the picture.
Okay.
So I think the edge AI and anything you want to do on the edge can be a great place for us to both from a DLI, a startup incentive standpoint, as well as creating more and more of small language models. In my humble opinion, that's where we should focus a lot more on. I have a sense that large language models are beginning to get to a point where they are looking a little similar to each other. There'll always be constant innovation around, but the more we focus downstream on the verticalized applications of AI at silicon and at the edge, does India have a much bigger chance? I would rather focus on that much more. And to your earlier question, as part of ISM, we have a combination of both OSAT and full foundry models, and both of them have different sets of challenges, but both are useful. But one common thing they both do is activate a very critical part of the ecosystem, the supplier-vendor ecosystem. That is what
Absolutely.
India needs a lot. And with that coming to shape the next many years, by the end of the decade, I believe we'll have a pretty robust, skilled workforce, access to key suppliers and vendors,
Right.
reasonable localization, and hopefully start producing chips both for internal and external consumption.
Absolutely. That's the ambition. Mr. Anand Ramamoorthy, MD Micron India. Thank you so much for the time.